Welcome to the latest episode of Sports Bazaar with me, Mick Malloy, and doing the heavy lifting, as always, Titus O'Reilly. How are you, Titus?
I'm well, and I'm especially excited because it's Olympics.
It's Olympics, a special time of year, and to celebrate, we've gone casual. I'm not going to lie to you. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's a bit hot here in the studio today, so you've taken your jacket off, which is like free-balling for you.
Yeah, I know. I feel
I've
undressed.
I've ripped the flanny off. Like a male stripper, and just sitting here with a t-shirt on. So apologies.
It is literally how hot. It's tropical, isn't it?
It's tropical.
I mean, you were in Colombia. Was it this hot in Colombia?
Right, that was like winter.
Because we're in this building where, for some reason, the thermostat is in another room that we don't control.
Yeah, well, I'll give you the background. This office, we're off to a flyer. This office used to be one, and then they cut it in half and made two. But the guy on the other side controls the thermostat.
And he doesn't really talk to us.
He's a freaking Eskimo or something.
Yeah.
He is the most ridiculous man. He won't be listening to this.
No,
he's way too nerdy to listen to this. He won't make eye contact with you.
No,
How long has he been there? If he's not burying bodies in that office, I don't know what's going on. Maybe that's why the heat's up.
I do have to agree with you. Something weird is because it is sweltering in here. This is the hottest I've been
Feels like
in a long
the
time.
Sprinklers in the roof are about to go off.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we go off track...
If I was a chick, I was thinking I would be going through menopause right now.
Yeah, I know. It does feel hormonally hot. Is that a phrase?
Yeah, I don't know.
Now,
Google it.
We're doing Olympics.
Yes, we are.
So
it's that time of year.
And we have done Olympics before, so we're going to put up around this.
Can we repost some?
We are reposting. We're reposting some of the 1900 Paris and things like that. But today we're doing an all new one. And do you want to know what we're doing?
I do. Hit me.
So we are doing a specific Olympics. So we've done the 1900 Olympics before, but we are doing the 1936 Olympics.
So that's pre-Second World War.
Pre-Second World War.
Is it at Berlin?
It is Berlin.
Jesus.
There was a guy with a little mustache that oversaw this. And
who ruined that look for anyone coming after?
Oh, and the name Adolf. You don't see many. Someone once told me they once got couples counselling, and the guy's name was Adolf. I said,
really,
you cannot be telling the truth. And they said, I swear he's kept the name. It's been kept in the family name. This was like 10 years ago. This was like 40 years ago.
Well, remember you did the one on the brothers, Adidas brothers.
Yes,
one of them was an Adolf, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, Adolf Dassler was the guy who started...
The good Adolf.
Who started Adidas. Adidas is short for Adolf Dassler. So if you haven't listened to that one, go back and listen to that one. Because that was a ripper one. So today we're doing the 1936 Berlin Olympics.
Okay.
And this, I think we'll go a couple of episodes. And the thing about it is, one, it's we learnt in FIFA the ability of international sporting organisations to do moral gymnastics.
Right.
Not just do moral gymnastics to further their own needs, but to always actively embrace dictators. Right? So we'll learn that. We've got amazing storage of courage and people doing great things.
Defiance.
From defiance to friendship, that under pressure not to be friends, for people doing this.
Yes.
We've got people turning blind eyes like you wouldn't believe.
Right.
But we've also got, and a lot of people forget this, is almost everything that is now in the Olympics, what a modern Olympics really is. And anyone that's listened to our 1900 Paris Olympics episode or our 1904 St. Louis marathon story will know the Olympics for a long time were a hot mess.
Yeah. Shambles.
A shambles. The Nazis
beat it into shape
and made it what it is today.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to give them credit. I'm just saying it's amazing how much the IOC after the war went, yeah, look, we don't want to talk about the Nazis, but boy, they did some things we like.
Sounds like you're pro-Nazi.
Well, I should just put on record I'm very not pro-Nazi.
Yeah, I know you're not. But in this department, they did a couple of good things.
Well, I would say that
Jesus.
No, I'm
do
not saying
remove
that.
that line for a promo, all right?
Yeah, I know.
Do
Say
not.
what you like about the Nazis, but no, it's just more amazing that things that have now been sanitized and you would go, oh, I didn't realize, were created by them.
Yeah.
And it more just shows that and when we tell this story, you'll see why some of the people at the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, have quite willingly kept things in place that the Nazis came up with because they were quite fond of the Nazis.
Okay.
So there's a lot going on here that we're going to meet some great characters. So,
Can I say, have you been to Berlin?
No, I've never been to Berlin.
What a fantastic city. It's one of the great cities in the world, and the people are very smart and honest. You know what I mean? They own their past.
Yep.
It's smart. It's a great... When you've lost a couple of world wars, I reckon you don't sweat the small stuff.
It really knocks you in the
Really
puts things in perspective.
Yeah, all right. And they own it way more than I think the Japanese do. Or they will go, well, it wasn't a great time for us. Yep, no, it wasn't our best side. You know what I mean?
Once again, I just want to apologise about those whole 2 world wars.
That got away from us.
But
I also walk around that city and you look at all those buildings and those monuments and you see it and you go, how the hell did they lose that war? Because it's the most impressive city. Sure, everything's got bullet holes that was made in that era, but it's what an impressive place. And these people were good at what they were doing.
And partly, the Olympics comes into this, partly why they didn't win the war is they spent all their money on things like these buildings instead of ammunition.
Oh, really?
So there were a lot of problems inherent in their thing.
Pretty impressive, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah. So this is kind of the perfect story.
Great beer gardens. Have I mentioned that? They're great. And now drinking outdoors. Well, let's paint the picture.
Yeah.
Great, like the best beer gardens in the world and the best, like the cuisine, you can take it. But their pub food or their bar snacks, I've never seen pretzels like it. A pretzel the size of a football.
And schnitzels and everything.
Oh, mate.
But aren't they sort of, it seems to me like this is really your alley in that food seems to revolve around, you've drunk a lot of beer.
Yeah.
And you need something to eat that's
and
going to balance you out a little.
The pretzel is genius. And over there, you've never seen pretzels like it.
Yeah.
You need planning permission from the council.
I feel like with our moonshine one where we drink moonshine, we should be having a stein and a pretzel.
Oh, I'll have a stein.
Yeah, I think
and a giant pretzel.
Next episode we might have a stein.
Mate, I saw a pickle, right? And I saw it was a guy. So imagine a Red Bull can.
Yeah.
I see a guy get up in a cafe, buy it, rip the top off, and pull out a giant pickle
and just eat it
and woof the pickle. So I had to have one.
No wonder you just absolutely love Germany.
They love it. They make a great beer. The German,
they
good
are
on the
known for
beer.
it,
The beer garden, you can have a cigarette. You know, the dogs are allowed to run through. There's a lot to like about this town.
You're really selling it. But you're anti the Nazis.
Of course.
So we just want to get that on record to everyone before we go down this path.
Yeah, they let themselves down.
So let's go back to the start. In 1912,
all right,
the IOC selected Berlin to host the 1916 Olympic Games.
Wow, that became
now spoiler
impossible.
alert.
What happened?
Those games did not
minute?
go ahead because of a whole hope of reasons, mainly the First World War.
Oh yeah, we all remember that.
With the great unpleasantness. And so after the First World War, but they'd put in a lot of work to get ready for the games, and then suddenly, because they got given it in 1912, and so they had 2 years until it all kind of fell over.
Yeah.
So once it fell over, it was cancelled. After the war, Germany were banned because they were seen, obviously, Treaty of Versailles, and everyone was quite low on Germany after the First World War. Yeah, they were out of vogue, and they were basically isolated from the international community.
Were they allowed to compete?
No, 1920 and 1924, they were out. Not allowed to be in it. Now, 2 men had driven Germany's bid for the Olympics back in 1912 for the 1916 Olympics successfully, and they were still in place. So one of them was Theodor Luold. Now, Luold was a civil servant in Prussia So he'd been around a long time. 1885, he was in Prussia before Germany was fully established, but it wasn't.
Right.
He'd been the Reich Commissioner in 1903, and he was so involved that, as well as organising the 1916 games, he had been around for so long that when the war ended, the First World War, he actually wrote the abdication speech for the Kaiser, Wilhelm II. So he was a well-connected. He was the highest civil servant in Imperial Germany,
Right.
and then when the Weimar Republic comes in after World War One, he is quite a conservative, not a Nazi, but quite a conservative, and he falls out with the Social Democrats and leaves and becomes basically his major job is the head of the German Olympic Committee.
Right.
So he's been there since the very start. His right-hand man was a guy called Karl Diem. He'd been a keen athlete, and he'd been running sports organisations in Germany since he was 20.
Right.
He found out he was a better organiser of sport than participant. He wasn't terrible, but...
What year is this?
This is from sort of 1914 onwards.
Right.
Well, before the war, they got... So Diem and Luld, they basically had gotten the Olympics back before World War One.
Yeah.
Now, while Luld had been writing this abdication speech for the Kaiser, Diem had gone and fought in World War One.
Sorry
about everything.
Oopsie.
Diem had enlisted he fought in World War One in Belgium and France, and he was wounded. So he was sort of a bit of a war hero as well. So once the war was over, Germany, these two, Diem and Luld, they started to look at how can we get Germany back into the Olympics and into international sports. And so Luld was the president of the German Olympic Committee, and Diem was its secretary, and they start lobbying the IOC for Germany to be let back in. This is in the early 20s. And it started to work because at this point, Germany's the Weimar Republic. It's a democratic republic. So everyone's like going, well, they've lost the war. They're reforming. They're reforming. The Kaiser's gone. What could go wrong in Germany? It's now a democracy like us. We've got to start letting them back in. And so Luld actually becomes a member of the IOC in 1926. He's back in at the highest level. And they're back
competing again?
Well, they're then allowed in 1928 to send a team to Amsterdam. And then they start...
It's not far for them.
Not far. And it's just a short tank ride over.
Next door.
And then they set their sights on...
They're allowed to go to any country they hadn't invaded.
Then they start to set their sights on, well, we'd like to host the Olympics. We're back in them.
Jeez.
But we'd like to host one. And it would signal our...
Return to the fold.
Yeah, to the international brotherhood of countries. And so they aim for 1936. Now, a bunch of other cities also announced they want to get the 1936 games. Alexandria, Budapest, Buenos Aires, Cologne, Dublin, Frankfurt, Helsinki, Montevideo, Nuremberg, Rio de Janeiro, and Rome all say, we want it. Now, Luld says, well, why don't we host the 9th Olympic Congress in the city of Berlin? And this is where they just meet the Olympic people. And they host, and this is a huge way for them to, what they do is they roll out celebrities and the government to meet all the delegates, which had never been done before. The lobbying you see now had never been done.
Was invented at
the way the IOC used to decide is they would meet the 8 people on the IOC committee, and they'd pick one of them who had one of their countries and go, do you want to host it? Yeah, sure. And that was because it was not a big deal.
Then they got onto the ingratiating, the kowtowing.
The money.
Grifting.
So they bring them in and they bring in they throw everything at them. President Hindenburg, who is the man that appoints Hitler.
What a way to be remembered.
Later on, he even meets with the IOC and shakes hands and says, we'd love to have you in Berlin. They lobby them all the time.
Anything we can do for you.
Yeah, what can we help? They schmooze them all. Other cities start dropping out, and soon all that's left is Berlin, Rome, and Barcelona.
Oh, some heavy hitters there, though.
Yeah. Now, they look at Rome, the IOC, and they're a bit concerned because in Rome there's a fascist government. Benito Mussolini has just come to power.
Oh, yeah.
And they think, we would probably prefer... America will not like it being in Rome because of a fascist dictator in charge.
Sure.
So Berlin would be a much better option.
And did it prove to be?
Yeah. So they're like, well, that's what they're sort of thinking as. And they thought that the fascist government had taken over all of Italian sport, so they thought it's not a great look. So they were cold on Rome. Yeah. Now, Lewald, as the head of the German Olympic Committee, he actually employs this is part of his campaign, which no one's ever done before. He gets the Prussian Meteorological Institute to conduct a study which predicts unfavourable weather conditions in Rome. And
that's dirty, Paul.
And Barcelona.
You're cooking those books, aren't you?
And then he gets Carl Diem to leak that to a Dutch newspaper. And then points out to the IOC, gee, did you see that report that's come out? That's not good.
That's great.
Berlin would be much better. He also writes to every IOC
this is like
delegate.
The Russians interfering in elections, isn't it? You're kind of embedding information in...
That's right. They're leaking. And he, for example, he sends the 2 German ambassadors to Japan. He rings them and says, can you go see the Japanese IOC reps and ask them to vote for us? And in return, we'll vote for them for Tokyo in 1940.
I thought you were going to say, in return, we'll vote for them for whale harpooning. Because, that's how they do it.
That's how that all happens.
They realise that an island like Nauru in the South Pacific has a vote on the International Whaling Commission, and they went round and got enough votes from little countries.
Who did that? That's what FIFA did, remember?
That's what FIFA did in the West Indies.
All we learned...
It's a time-honoured tradition of cooking the books.
All we've learned in any international organisation, pay attention to the little countries.
The tail is wagging the dog.
Absolutely. So they get the Japanese on... They actually start doing vote swapping, basically. You vote for us now, we'll vote for you for the next one. Yeah. So this has never happened before. This is like new stuff, right? The other thing that falls in their favour is Barcelona's having trouble because the king has been forcefully knocked off by the Second Spanish Republic has been put in place.
Yeah, that's not great.
And then it's not far away to when Franco and the Spanish Civil War all kicks off. So it's unstable, right? Yeah. So on top of that, Lewald had promised the IOC that Berlin would pay for all the work on the new stadium, which is all the IOC really cared about in these early days. They just said, as long as you pay for the stadium, we're interested in having it with you. Right? So the vote comes along, and first Diem and Lewald managed to get the Winter Olympics in 1936. Now, the Winter Olympics at this point, the IOC barely cares about it, but they say, yeah, sure, you can have the Winter Olympics. And then...
Mind you, the Germans would love that because, I'm just going to say it, it's basically white nations.
Yes. It's the Nordic nations.
I call it the good-looking Olympics. The good-looking Olympics for rich people.
Yeah, it is.
You know what I mean? It's just...
Yeah, there's not a lot of poor countries.
No.
Let's be honest. When Switzerland are right up there in the medal tally.
Pretty Caucasian.
It's very Caucasian. It's very white. Now, by the time in 1931, it's time to vote, and Rome pull out the night before the vote.
See the writing on the wall?
I think they've seen the writing on the wall that with Mussolini in place, the IOC do not want to give the Olympics to a place with a fascist dictator.
Okay.
Barcelona and Berlin are the only two left. Now, on top of that, Barcelona looking like heading towards civil war, which it does eventually. Right. They decide...
I don't think the Germans haven't been putting that around.
They have been putting that around.
Their bulletins.
It goes between the two, and Berlin makes a strong pitch that it is more stable than Spain, and it doesn't have a fascist dictator like Rome. And they IOC say, perfect. So the vote goes 43-16, 8 people abstain, which was normal back then.
That's a landslide these days.
Landslide. And suddenly Germany have the Olympics on a bunch of promises that turn out they cannot keep. So the first thing that the German Olympic Committee need is money. So Lewald goes around trying to get financial support from industrial and business circles. But the Weimar Republic, remember all the hyperinflation? You see pictures
those wheelbarrows full of cash and all
exactly.
That stuff. They just kept printing more money.
So getting money is not easy. So they're trying to get money.
One of the contributing factors to the Second World War, was it not? The
depression
terrible,
and
deplorable life standards
Yeah.
imposed on them
Yeah.
after the First World War.
Yeah, so trying to get money for the stadium is not going well. By late June 1932, they have got nowhere near the money to be able to build it. And Lord starts writing that he says, I can't even predict if we're even going to be able to get the money to hold these Olympics.
Yeah.
It might get to the point where we have to hand them back. They keep trying to find the money, and they send Carl Diem across to the 1932 games in Los Angeles, which is the height of the Depression. And he observes everything they have got, and he thinks, we need to be better than them. I've got 4 years. He returns home, and he realises we don't have the money or anywhere to hold these Olympics. We're in real trouble.
Yes.
So then what happens, of course, is...
They didn't know that beforehand, or they just don't care? Is it one of those, just get it across the line and we'll sort it out afterwards?
I think they misjudged how bad a state with the Depression and hyperinflation things were going to be. Because these guys had been serious guys and had normally been able to raise the money. But it looks like at this point that the Olympics in Berlin are not going to happen. And they're about to get worse because they set up the official organising committee for the Olympic Games. And 5 days later, elections are held and Adolf Hitler is elected the new chancellor.
Okay.
Now, he then, not to go into deep dive on this, but, he then passes not long after the Enabling Act, which gives him dictatorial control of Germany in March 1933. Now, the thing about this is they suddenly go, this isn't great for us because Hitler hates the Olympics. He cannot stand it. So Lord and Diem are looking at it and they know that there is a real problem because the Nazis saw the Olympics, and this was in their official publications, was an expression of an individualistic democratic conception of sport and an artificial mechanical construct. And more importantly, Hitler said the Olympics was a project of Jews and Freemasons and a play inspired by Judaism which cannot possibly be put on in a Reich ruled by National Socialists.
That's not good.
That's not good.
It's not a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, he absolutely hates it. And he also says he hates...
He's doing some familiar material here too, isn't he?
Let's be honest, Hitler didn't have a big range.
It was everything. What's the problem here? Oh, it's be the Jewish people.
The Jews and the Freemasons, and that's about it. Well, and everything's a conspiracy. So none of this is like, this is classic Hitler.
Yeah. Hitler 101.
Hitler 101. So he also hated the idea of pure Aryans, as he called them, competing with lesser races. He just hated the idea of it. So... they're not really an internationalist brotherhood, the Nazis. They kind of, they're not. The Olympic ideals do not line up in any way, shape, or form with the Nazi ideals.
Their footing at the time under Hitler was not let's rejoin the group, was it?
No, he was like, let's
get back in.
Yeah, you got to remember he's already set up. Within months of him being passing the Enabling Act, he's set up concentration camps.
Yeah,
he's passed laws where you can arrest anyone who's a critic of the regime. He's putting in place all these, taking businesses off Jews, all sorts of things. So it's not like he moves slowly.
Knives not far away.
Yeah, he's purging. He's doing his purges. You got to purge people if you're a dictator. So Hitler was dead against it. The IOC start to get very nervous. They start to talk about. Do we take this off Berlin proactively? And they ask on the International Olympic Committee, there's a German member called Karl Ritter von Holt, and they ask him to go to Hitler to reaffirm that the games are going to take place now that there's a Nazi government in place. And so he does. Karl Ritter von Holt goes and sees Hitler. And all Hitler says is, we are meeting all our international obligations at the moment. But he showed no enthusiasm for the actual games, and there's no money for the games. So he's basically saying you can still hold it.
You want to put them on? Put them on.
Put them on. Oh. But we're not doing any of this. Even worse, Lord and Diem start coming under personal attack from the Nazis. So
That's not great.
So Lord,
That's a bit of pressure right there.
yeah, they start in the Nazi papers. They start calling them, saying they represent the bourgeois internationalist sport of the Weimar Republic.
Jesus.
Now they also notice that Lord has got part Jewish ancestry. His paternal grandmother was born a Jew, so they start calling for him to be dismissed as the president of the German Olympic Committee because he's classified as Jewish. Yep. Now, DM wasn't Jewish, but his wife had a Jewish ancestor, so they start to not like him. And he has set up a German sports university back in 1920, but it has Jews on its faculty. So the Nazi press announced that he is what's known as a white Jew.
They do their homework, don't they, the Nazi Party? They really put it up on blocks and look for any connection whatsoever, which can put a line through it.
Yeah, and a heap of people that they discriminated against didn't know their Jewish ancestry until the Nazis started examining their... So that's how they found out they were Jewish, and then they got persecuted. So they're like...
Yes.
It's the only, like all Germans, when they did their paperwork, they did it thoroughly.
Yeah, correct.
So you've suddenly got DM and Lewald under the gun. So it's looking like Hitler doesn't really want him, and you're now attacking the two guys that are running the Olympic movement in Germany.
Wow.
Right? So on March 16th, 1933, Hitler lets DM and Lewald come see him and the mayor of Berlin. And he manages to sort of be polite, and he says, I'll give you my tentative approval to host the games. But he's, once again, not that enthused. And so they leave, and they're like, okay. He seems to be not wanting to upset. That's, he's already getting a lot of heat internationally for a lot of what he's already doing. We might be okay, but they're still trying to get... They're going to Berlin government and saying, can we have the money? Berlin saying, no, go to the Reich government. They go to the Reich government, no one will meet with them. And so they got no money. So they finally, Lewald, because he has been for so long a top diplomat, and despite his Jewish background, is seen as a conservative.
Yes.
He does have some connections, and he manages to get an appointment with Joseph Goebbels, the new Minister of Propaganda.
Okay.
And he goes and meets with him and says, I don't think you guys are getting what an opportunity this is to sell the new Germany. And Goebbels says, and if you don't know your Nazi history, I know you do, but if anyone listening...
Goebbels, he had two small balls.
That was the bit from the poem.
Hitler, he had one green ball.
Yeah.
Goebbels, he had two very small. Himmler, he had two similar, but poor old Rudolph, I believe, had no balls at all.
It's funny, I remember that from my primary school days. I wonder if kids these days still do that. I'm going to go ask some kids.
Well, that's oral history handed down from generation to generation.
So Goebbels obviously is this genius of propaganda.
Well, the master.
The master. So he very quickly thinks, I could use these Olympics, but I better go see Hitler because Hitler's not a fan.
Yeah.
So Goebbels goes and says, he actually says publicly at one point to some...
We can turn this around. This could be a big plus for us.
Well, Goebbels argues that, in his opinion, gaining power was only part of the process in creating the new German state. The Nazis needed to win the heart of the people. He saw sports were crucial to this success, as according to him, it would strengthen the character of the German people, imbuing it with the fighting spirit and steadfast camaraderie necessary in the struggle for its existence. So he goes and convinces Hitler that this is an opportunity he couldn't miss, and it was a chance to show off the new Germany, but most importantly, the power of the Aryan race over the other races.
Yep.
Now that's speaking Hitler's language.
Yeah, you have his full attention.
And Hitler suddenly goes, okay, go ahead. If you can use it for propaganda, go ahead. He's still not sold on it, right? But he's like, fine, I won't cancel him. The problem is there's still no money. All these underlings, like people think dictators, like if the dictator says do something, everyone does it. The Nazis were so disorganised and fighting amongst each other that often even when Hitler gave a thing, they would all interpret it their own ways. Yeah, it was complete chaos, right? Like the idea they made trains run on time was not even true. They were absolute, like...
There was ruthless efficiency.
No, it was a complete mess. So as late as 5th of October 1933, Hitler finally says, and no one's contributing any money in the government, he goes, I want to go see the Olympic site. And they say, sure, mein Führer. And so he goes down and he looks at this site, which was the Reich Sport Fields meant to be built. And it's got the old stadium that was built for the 1916 Olympics, which is old and falling down. And there's just nothing else built. There's no progress because there's no money. And Hitler is furious because he hasn't been interested at this point, but suddenly he's on this thing and he goes, this is ridiculous. How have you not done anything? This is going to embarrass me.
Yes.
And he starts having these grand ideas of what he could do with the stadium. He's like, I don't like that stadium. So he says, I want you to come back to me with an entire plan for the Reich Sports Field by the middle of the month. I want a whole new plan. And so they come into this meeting and they give him a topographical map and they show him all these designs and everything. And he looks at it and says, okay, that's good. There we can do a whole area where 500,000 people can come for assemblies, festivals. We can do processions. They love a procession.
Yeah.
We can do all the
Bit of
pageantry.
goose-stepping.
Yep. He's like, we're going to do all this. We're going to build this all. And he says, I'm pleased with that area. He looks at the old stadium and he says, you know what? If we could... That old stadium's... the symmetry's not good at this site. If we put the stadium here, it would line directly up with one of their big avenues.
Right.
And he said, it would look so good, wouldn't it? And they're all like, yeah, I guess so. He goes, great, do that. Just move, get rid of the old stadium completely, build a brand new stadium 150 metres over.
Yeah.
Right? Just do it. It's going to look great. And they said, great idea, Führer. He says, why is it only 80,000 spectators? I want 100,000 in this new stadium.
We're getting a sense of his CEO
Yeah. And they say, well,
sensibilities here, aren't we?
and Lewald says, we can't make it any bigger because the Berlin Racing Association has a race course next door. And if the stadium is bigger, it will encroach into their area. And so Hitler says, how many race courses does Berlin have? And they go, 2, because Hitler wasn't into sports at all. Which makes sense because he looks like guy last picked on a team, right, in primary school.
He's an artist.
He's an artist. So he says, get rid of the race course. Gone. Race course is gone. So he said, it's gone. Move it. So they say, oh, we're not really allowed to. He goes, I don't care. Move it. So they get rid of the race course. Suddenly they're building 100,000 thing. So that's all been sorted. He then says, beyond that, I want there to be a big swimming pool. I want hockey pitches. I want a house of German sport, which is made of stone for indoor events.
He's on board now.
I want a vast open field called Mayfield where we can host pageantries and parades and do all these things ahead of the Olympics. And I want it all built into the landscape. I want architects on board. Here's some ideas. And so suddenly Hitler is all in on the Olympics because he loves this stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, he works out how he's going to walk into the stadium. I want a special tunnel built for me and I'll come out. It's all worked out. And they're
if
also...
I was Führer, that's what I'd be doing.
This is totally your behaviour. This is right. There's my tunnel. So in this short space of time, they've gone from Hitler doesn't want to have the Olympics and it doesn't look like they're going to even get them up to Hitler says, everyone says, well, these are great plans, mein Führer, these are brilliant. You're a genius. And he goes, I know. And they say, how are we going to pay for it? He goes, we will pay for everything. The Reich will pay. The federal government will pay. Don't worry about it. And money is no object. Yeah. So instead of the balanced budget that Karl Diem had put forward and proposed in late 1932, they suddenly get all the money they want. The budget is now 20 times higher.
It's blank check time.
Yep. They're allowed to move an underground train to the site. And Diem quietly uses this opportunity to quadruple his own wage.
Oh, as you would.
So suddenly even he, who is, on
Is he the one with Jewish relatives?
No, he's the one that doesn't, but he's the one that hires some Jewish people seen as a white Jew.
Just be careful with the quadrupling.
So he starts to say
could
this.
blow up in your face.
Hitler also says the organising of the summer and winter games are going to get full government support and financial backing in everything they need. Sports organisations will get full government support to select, train and finance all the athletes we need so that we win.
Are the best.
And when we prove the superiority of the German race.
Sure.
And we will put enormous amounts of money into press and propaganda services to spread the word of the Olympics and Germany.
Love it.
So they've gone from no interest
They're all in.
to all in. There's been a lot of discussion about why Hitler changed his mind. A big one is Hitler had withdrawn from the International Disarmament Conference and the League of Nations in a few weeks. He just left all these international ones. So his international standing was really shaky. Yeah. And people started to get word that there were concentration camps and the Jews were suffering from violence. So he thought...
Word's getting out now about what he's doing domestically.
Yeah, I need to do something positive.
Yeah.
So suddenly he says the Olympics is a way we show a different side of Germany, a more positive one. And it also allows us to fate all these people, right?
That and jodhpurs.
Yeah, and we love marching in step. He also he said, I love linking Germany to ancient Greece because we as Germans and the Aryan race, we are the inheritors of Greek culture and their physical prowess and their beauty. We are the continuation of this European, that went Rome and ancient Greece. It's a direct link from us to the Nazis, and we can show that through the Olympics.
He's building a modern Colosseum.
That's right. And he says we can show that we are the inheritors of that, not the French, not anyone else. It's us. Yeah. Another reason is he had no currency reserves in foreign currency. Germany was really broke. Right. And this was a way to get more money in. He reckons it was going to bring in, and it sort of did, about $500 million in foreign currency, which he needed to pay for things like tanks and planes and rearming Germany. And it was also a bunch of jobs. So with it all a priority, the Nazis now go, we need to take over the German Olympic Committee. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is, it's normally independent. Up until this point, this is where the Nazis invent something new, which is strong government control of the local Olympic Committee, because they don't really do independence. So they go to Lourdes and they say, because you're Jewish, you are no longer going to be the German Olympic president. You're kicked to the curb. The IOC are furious because they've known him since the 1916 games, and they
have a relationship with him. They trust him,
and they're furious. So the Nazis say, okay, we hire him back as a consultant, but we make him sign a secret document that says that he will always obey the Reich officials no matter what. And he will always push our benign face to the world. Yes. So they suddenly realize it's half useful to have someone with Jewish ancestry nominally figurehead running the Olympic Committee, because they can then say, whenever anyone says you're attacking the Jewish people, they can say, well, our head of the Olympic Committee is Jewish.
Why would our guy do that?
Yeah, why would? And so he agrees. Now, they also decide to keep on as Secretary General of the Organising Committee Karl Diem. Now, they realise he's very good at organising everything, and he's a white Jew in their mind, that he's not Jewish, but he associates with Jewish people. He starts to distance himself from the Jewish people a bit, and
he's read the room.
He's read the room, and he starts to ingratiate himself quite well with the Nazis and solidify his position a bit. But also the international AOC are also like, we quite like him too. Yeah. So they think, all right, we'll keep those two on board, but we'll take over. So they take over. They put 47 members on the organising committee. 40 members come direct from government departments. Now, to give you a comparison, the Los Angeles Summer Olympics, the one before, they only had 29 members on the organising committee, and none of them were members of the federal government. Yeah. And then people like the Ministry for Public Enlightenment and Propaganda had 6 members on it. The military, the Reich War Ministry, had 5 people on it.
Okay. We're stacking the deck.
They're stacking the deck. Wilhelm Frick is given ultimate control of the whole Olympics as the Interior Minister. Mm. Now, he is a keen Nazi going all the way back to the beer hall push. Very loyal to Hitler.
Even before it was trendy.
Yeah, I was into this before anyone had heard of him. He's a total, horrible Nazi war criminal after the war. Everything wrong about him, you can imagine. So he's in charge. His state secretary in the Reich Interior Ministry is Hans Funter, and he organises a lot of it. He's in gentlemen clubs like the Berlin Club and the National Club, and he'd given Goebbels a lot of platforms in the 20s. So the Nazis saw him as a good, solid bloke because he sort of had looked after them when they were nothing.
Yeah.
And he'd come around to being a Nazi pretty quickly. In fact, as a lawyer and a bureaucrat, one of his first things, apart from running the Olympics, was he drew up the Nuremberg laws. He was one of the key architects, which took all the, basically stripped most citizenship from the Jews. So he's not a great guy. They put in charge of the actual Olympics the new president of the National Olympic Committee, after Lewald had pushed aside to his ceremonial role, a guy called Hans von Schammer und Osten. Now, und Osten is a loyal supporter since the 20s of the Nazis. He'd been a captain. He knew nothing about sport at all. He was so ignorant, someone wrote, he was so ignorant about sport that should have disqualified him. Once a soldier received a beating from him from failing to salute him. So he was a full, crazy guy. So suddenly he's in charge, and they were happy to have him there. Now, the thing about that, though, is he decides, I'm going to leave Lewald and DM in place to do all the work. I don't want to do any of the work.
Sure.
And it shows you how much the Olympics have become central, that they're willing to put up with two who are seen as dodgy on anti-Semitism. Leave them in place, right?
Yeah, they're useful to us.
So they start planning all of this and they start financing all of this, and suddenly they're away. Now, at the same time, in 1933, the Nazis, around this is all happening, they announced that all Jewish people are excluded from the sports clubs across Germany. So all over the place, they have all their sporting clubs for all these. They say you can't be part of them. You're all gone. Aryan only policies. If you want to use any of the boxing rings or track and field or gymnasiums, you can't be Jewish.
Right.
So they purge. Now this causes the Olympic Committee to be a little unsure of what's going on. So they're walking this line.
Pretty bit nervous, are they?
Well, they're walking this line of we want to get rid of all the Jews, but we don't want the IOC to take the Olympics off us. So we'll do it, and then we'll kind of make promises that they won't. Sure. It starts this game. But there's a guy called Erich Seelig, who was a world championship boxer. He was expelled from the German Boxing Association. He had to go to the US. Daniel Pren, who was in tennis, he was removed from their Davis Cup team and banned from international competition for being Jewish. And that all the German sporting associations eventually merged into the Reich Federal Sporting Association. So they are literally run by the Nazis now. So with the Nazis kicking all the Jewish athletes out, this obviously...
Alarm bells are ringing.
This becomes an international crisis. Yes. And on June 7th, 1933, the president of the IOC, Comte Henri de Ballet Latour, who is literally...
Comte to me.
He's a duke. He's the Duke of Mecklenburg-Schwerin. My German is not good. I did German at...
Get out.
I did German for 2 years at high school, and all I learnt was Deutsch heute, which was the name of the textbook.
All I know is Scheissenhausen.
So they asked the German delegates...
Is a duke... What would you be if you could be would you be duke, an earl?
If I had to pick one of the ones to be... Baron sounds good.
Baron.
Baron sounds like to be a baron of something.
You need a von after that.
Or Tsar's good too. You know, someone's always the drug czar or the...
I'll be a duke.
You'd be a duke?
Earl.
Yeah,
Earl's
I can see you there. Archduke is always good. Just don't want to get shot. So the IOC pull in the German delegates, Lewald and Karl Ritter von Holt, who are the two German ones, and they say, we're a bit concerned, one, about Lewald being pushed aside, two, about DM's position maybe being in trouble, and three, about the Jewish athletes not being allowed to compete and try and earn a spot on the German team. We're a bit worried about it.
So they're pushing back?
They're pushing back. And they start saying, what's going to happen about this? And Lewald... because he's sort of between a rock and a hard place. He says, look, no, we promise Germany will let the Jewish athletes compete. What you're hearing is not right. we are going to do it. We give our guarantee. We don't want you to take it away. So I give you my personal guarantee that we will let the Jewish athletes compete. Now, the two American members of the committee, Brigadier General Charles H. Sherrill and Colonel William May Garland, they say, look, they push the IOC members and with the German delegates and say, look, if you guys don't fix this up, we're going to take the games off you. This is how serious it is, right? And the Germans see this as, well, the Jews control everything in America.
Is that their official response?
Not official, but that's what they say it in other correspondence between each other. But the Americans won't let it go and say, if you discriminate against Jewish athletes, we'll take the games off you. It goes against the charter of the Olympics, which is all races, all creeds, all religions. And so Lord again says, yep, we've got it. We're going to let them in. And the American delegates again say, well, we don't really trust you. We want it in writing.
Yes.
So they put it in writing, and it's called the Vienna Pledge, because it's held in Vienna, this committee. And it says that Nazi guarantees are that the Jewish athletes will be allowed to compete for Germany. And then also, it's not in the actual pledge, but also that they will keep in place Lewald in place and DM in place on the Olympic Committee. Right. So that's what they sort of say they're going to do. Now, straight away, following that convention, Undolsten, who's the head of the Nazi, of the president of the German Olympic Committee, he gets asked by various sport administrations and journalists in Germany, well, how come you're saying Jews can compete when you've told us to kick them all out?
Yeah.
And he says, look, you're probably astonished by the decision in Vienna, but you got to remember, I've got to keep these foreign political people happy.
Has he said that publicly?
He's saying it to them.
To them, right.
They all record it. He says, we're not really doing that. Right?
That's not who we are.
Yeah, that's what, and he also says in the same one of these meetings, he says, look, one, we're not doing that. I just said it because I have to. And we don't want to lose. The Fuhrer would be pretty angry if we lost the Olympics. So we'll say whatever we need to say. Yeah. Secondly, he said, I'm actually really thrilled with the racial cleansing of all the German sports clubs. You're all actually doing a really great job. I'm really thrilled with you all. So they're just...
Keep up the good work.
Keep up the good work. Now, the George S. Messersmith, the United States Consul General in Berlin, he writes back to the State Department of the Roosevelt administration and says, don't trust these Germans. Yeah. They are totally lying to you. They are still excluding the Jews and doing horrible stuff over here. I don't think you should believe them at all. And I actually think that the Olympic team, the American Olympic team, can't be sent here in these conditions. In fact, I think it would be unsafe for American Jews to even come here as visitors during the Olympics.
That's a pretty good travel warning.
That's a good travel warning.
That's a big one.
So this gets to the point where this is all swirling around. The IOC have said, well, we've got this pledge, so the IOC just want to do it. They're just like, we've got this pledge. I don't know what everyone's... The Nazis told us they're not going to persecute them. Relax. Don't. But meanwhile, the local journos from press is still there. They're all feeding back what they're telling.
Where the ground goes.
The IOC is going, we've got this pledge. So boycott movements start coming up in all these other countries. So Great Britain, France, Sweden, Czechoslovakia and the Netherlands all say, I reckon we should not go to the 1936 Olympic Games. The New York Times in 1933, the headline says, 1936 Olympics may be cancelled due to Germany's campaign against the Jews. This is like a huge problem suddenly. The American Olympic Association, they are sceptical about the Nazis and their ability to run Jewish athletes, and they start thinking about a boycott as well. The diplomats all say, not only is he probably not going to let Jewish citizens compete, but we also think he's going to use these games for propaganda purposes solely, and we should not be giving him the platform. So America should not go to the Olympics. Right? Yes. So it's all off. Now, the Nazis
no spectre of war or anything at this stage. Though,
no, not at this stage.
They're just uncomfortable with his
yeah, everyone's uncomfortable because, you're seeing Jews being beaten up and killed in the street, and they've passed laws where Germans can't marry someone of Jewish heritage.
Yeah,
They've kicked them out of all the bureaucracy.
Right.
Can't work for the government. They're taking money off them. Like, it's pretty horrible, right?
It's incredible.
So it's not a borderline
is
thing. Is the legitimate thing. So this is all in the balance. It seems like it's going to be either cancelled or America will not go. And everyone is watching the United States, because if the United States don't go, one, they're the biggest team, but two, everyone thinks it's a bit like a party. If someone key doesn't go, other people start dropping out.
A-listers. There's no A-listers.
No A-listers, yeah. So everyone is waiting for the Americans to make their decision, and if the Americans say no, it's pretty much going to be
all over.
Now, despite the Vienna Pledge, the American Olympic Committee and the Amateur Athletic Union, they're the two big bodies in America. To send anyone to the Olympics, both those bodies have to sign off, right? On that person. They have a guy called Gustavus Kirby, who's the American Olympic Committee treasurer, and he's a former president of the Amateur Athletic Union. He is furious about what some of the Nazis have been saying and the persecutions against the Jews. And he says he puts forward a resolution to boycott the 1936 games.
Yeah, there you go.
And it doesn't go to the committee to be voted on yet, but this is called the Kirby Pledge, and it becomes the official position at the moment.
Yep.
So it looks like the Americans are not going.
Is public knowledge?
It's reported and everything. Everyone's saying it hasn't been voted on yet, but it is looking like the American team will not go. And Hitler is paranoid about this. He personally starts to worry. Now, the problem is the president of the AOC, he publicly supports Kirby's pledge, because Kirby is the treasurer. But he is one of the people that believes that politics and sport should never mix, and that they should stay above it, and it's not their concern what's happening in Germany. And his name is Avery Brundage. Now, Avery Brundage, as president of the AOC, has suddenly become a key to these games happening or not, because he is the man to decide really whether the Americans go.
Okay.
Now, Frank Zarnowski, he wrote a book called All Around Men, Heroes of a Forgotten Sport. He describes Brundage this way: as a taciturn, secretive man, a construction czar, an anti-Semite, a sports administrator, a Nazi sympathiser, a polygamist, an art collector, an ideals evangelist, a womanizer, and a general curmudgeon.
I believe that's his Tinder profile.
Even the IOC on their official thing say his reign was controversial on their official one.
Even they raise an
Even
eyebrow.
they are like,
oh, well, this bodes well.
Yeah, so in our next episode when we come back, we are going to meet Avery Brundage in detail, and we are going to find out how he, almost single-handedly, delivers Hitler the Olympics he wants.
Fantastic. Cannot wait. You've brought us to the boil beautifully. We will be back to boot this series home in our next episode. Thank you, Titus.